Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot, Managing Director and Head of Research at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host our Red Cloud webinar on gold today, and we will hear from management of E79 Resources, including Rory Quinn, CEO. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook of the company, and then we'll take some questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we'll get to as many as we can. But before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this E79 Resources webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to their forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of its corporate presentation, and that can be found on the company's website at e79resources.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors, and participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on E79. So with that, I now turn it over to Rory to kick off today's webinar. Rory.
Thank you, David. Much appreciated. Thank you, everyone, for joining me to learn a little bit about E79 Resources. I'll take you through a bit of my background before I get into it. I've spent about 7 years prior to this. My experience was with Wheaton Precious Metals. I was more on the finance side there and helped market the company predominantly around North America, but also around Europe. And was sort of involved also on the corporate development committee, sat in on that as we did about $6 billion worth of transactions as we built out our precious metals business. And I looked at, hundreds of various mining projects around the world. And E79 Resources, our focus is in the Victorian goldfields in Australia. And my first exposure with that area of the world was looking at Kirkland Lake's Fosterville. And as they proved that out into really one of the highest grade gold mines in the world, and most importantly, one of the most profitable gold mines in the world. And looking at that region and just how underexplored it had been, it's now seeing really a renaissance. There's a lot of folks interested in that area, particularly Canadians, as it was a Canadian company, Kirkland Lake, that really developed that world-class ore body. But we were able to secure priority ground in 2018, and E79 subsequently acquired that private company that acquired that land in 2018. I was introduced to this as I was looking for my first CEO role in the space, and I met my partner on the project, Martin Pavlicek, who's a senior VP and head geologist at a prominent private equity company out of London, UK. And previous to that was with BHP, still I think the largest mining company in the world. He was with them prior to them exiting gold, and actually helped them acquire one of our projects, Beaufort, before they exited gold. Getting into the slides here. Yes, I will be making forward-looking statements, so please be aware of that. E79 has 2 projects in the Victorian goldfields, over 500 square kilometers of ground. As I said, priority land that we acquired in the context of 2018, as Fosterville itself was really proved out into the world-class ore body we know it is today. At Beaufort, roughly 1 million ounces, over 1 million ounces of historic alluvial gold production there, never sourced to hard rock. And at Myrtleford, in that area, in the gold field in that area, roughly 5 million ounces produced at sort of hundreds of small gold mines, but virtually all gold mining and exploration stopping at the water table. These were advanced by small syndicates and folks working on individual plots of land and prospecting. and it's never been looked at as a whole. And so we really secured consolidation of the entire historic gold mining camp there, and probably 80% of that whole region there. We're currently we've been drilling now on both properties. We're drilling now at Beaufort. We have 4 targets there that we're really excited about. And we just finished drilling off phase 1 drilling at Myrtleford. We've got assays pending on 2 drill holes that were invisible gold on our first 2 drill holes. The second more spectacular, 80 meters away from the first. So we're eagerly anticipating assays there. We should receive them in the next week or 2. As far as valuation, I think we've putting in a really pretty base now in our chart. I think we've consolidated nicely here in the sort of low 30s. So I'd encourage you to take a look at our chart. And we're funded. We've about $4.5 million in the bank. We're seeing $200, less than $200 a meter for drilling costs. So very, very competitive. And we've got an excellent management team, excellent team on the ground. Obviously, at this time during COVID, limited ability to travel. We've got 2 very good folks managing these drill programs on the ground. And that's been integral to us building consensus, getting our permits, and getting the drilling done on time and on budget. So Victoria Goldfields, tier 1 jurisdiction, over 80 million ounces historically until very recently, very much underexplored. And I think internationally it's been quite overlooked, really, and even in Australia, it's been overlooked in favor of Western Australia, where it's much easier to put together substantial parcels of lands and dealing with landowners, and really that's to our benefit now, because Victoria has been so overlooked, and there's just so much prospectivity. It's really shocking just how prospective and how overlooked this area of the world is, and I'll just flip over here to our next slide. Getting into Beaufort. Really, I think what we're looking for here is we've got that classic Fosterville type geochemical signature: gold, arsenic, antimony, and even lead. This area has never been explored for this Fosterville style mineralization. Was never considered by previous explorers. They're always looking for large tonnage, low grade, open pitable type deposits, typically in the context of lower gold pricing than what we're dealing with today. Beaufort's about 150 kilometers west of Melbourne. It's a single contiguous parcel of about 120 square kilometers. Very good access by paved and gravel roads. 100% owned, so it's not an option. We're not optioning into this. 100% owned, 1% NSR back to the vendors. Pretty half-hearted efforts relative to the properties to Beaufort historically. I'll draw your attention to BHP in the early 2000s. They were looking at this area. They found the geology quite interesting, and it was actually Martin, the vendor and my partner on the project, that pulled this at Beaufort in for BHP at the time, and they were looking for a Sukhoi log analog. Sukhoi log is the massive gold deposit in Siberia, 50 million ounces plus. And they were interested in this area of the world at Beaufort prior to them exiting gold. Even a mine like Fosterville doesn't move the needle for a large diversified company like BHP. So they since exited gold. Placer Dome were on Beaufort again in the early 2000s, and this was in the context of roughly $300 an ounce gold. And they again were looking for something large at surface. We're looking for like 10 million ounces, 10 million ounce deposit, and open pitable. They did a large, as far as a large grid of sort of 250 meter by 500 meters, so very wide. It's kind of an odd program to put together, and RAB drilling, so only down about don't know, 40, 50, 60 meters, not just into the weathered zone, the oxide, not getting down into the fresh rock whatsoever. Really not the type of program that you would design for a high-grade, structurally controlled mineralization, perhaps something you might do for porphyry, but they were looking for something close to surface, large, and relatively easy to develop. Page 9 here. This is a good and important slide to understand the salient features of the property. Here, I'll use the clipboard here. Here is the fault that runs. Actually, let me do that again. A fault that runs all the way through the property. That's the Navarre fault, and that runs for about 200 kilometers in the region. It's known to host gold, and our property sits right on top of that. So it runs for about 20 kilometers. We also have this cross-cutting structural feature, and I'll draw your attention to the red areas highlighted in red. That is the alluvial gold production, over 1 million ounces of historic alluvial gold production and the associated workings. And this Navarre fault is associated with a ridge that runs all the way through the property, actually through about here. And that's called the Camp Hill Range. And you can see the areas highlighted in red in the gullies on either side of that ridge. And the old timers that worked the property tended to chase that alluvial gold up those gullies to the top of that ridge. And I'll draw your attention to the areas highlighted in gold and white. Those are shallow pits dug by the old timers and looking for gold. So they tended to believe that the gold was being shed off of this ridge, and that this ridge, this Camp Hill Range associated with this Navarre fault, was the source of all of this gold. They would not have had any joy, though, at the top of this ridge. They may have been looking for Ballarat-style sort of broad quartz veins, but they would not have found that here. This is much more like what's seen at Fosterville. They would have been in saprolite. At Fosterville, they have a bioxidation plant to deal with this type of material. It's refractory, so it needs to. They have an autoclave type facility there. So they would not have had the technology. They may have found flakes and nuggets, but they would not have had the technology to extract much in the way of gold. We are of the same opinion and the same thesis, though, is that this gold has been, over millions of years, has been shed off of this ridge, and that this ridge is the likely source of all of this gold. Again, it's the source. It's an enigmatic placer. The source of all this gold has never been found. And taking a look at the properties and sort of where we've done our sampling and our targeting, we spent most of our time in the central grid here in the middle of your page. That's where we started out doing a 100-meter grid, developed a 2 kilometer long gold arsenic antimony anomaly, and then subsequently followed up on that with infill sampling, showing the highest grade gold areas within that suite of Pathfinder elements, the gold, arsenic, antimony, lead. And so down to a resolution of about 25-meter grid. We've now completed the north grid and the magazine grid. We've now completed the infill there, and we're now doing the infill on the southern grid. We'll sample this entire trend. We're doing these systematically, but we'll endeavor to get in and soil sample and infill soil sample this entire trend here. The magazine grid, interestingly, when we were doing soil sampling there, we found gold nuggets, and this larger one's about 1 centimeter across. And I think what interested us in particular about these gold nuggets is, first of all, we feel like we're working in the right area, but also just the physical nature of these nuggets is that they're rough, sharp, pitted. So we feel that these have not traveled far, that it's of a proximal source. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll do more work chemically, but we see silver and iron oxide. And again, this sort of just helps our thesis that this is a proximal source. Looking at the drilling here underway at Beaufort, we've just gotten in and done our first hole, collaring our second. I'll draw your attention here. These are the drill holes the pads that we're setting up here. And there's another one here. Yeah. So those are the areas that we're just starting on, that we've permitted, and we'll permit more as we go. We have this really nice target, this sort of 2 kilometers long target here. We've looking at within the infill area of sort of the elevated gold within that suite. We're doing a couple of holes into that structure, but we'll get in and target this whole area here that's of interest. And this area here is quite interesting too. We're now going to work on getting into this area, but this area looks quite interesting to us as well. So here we're targeting the bedrock soil geochemical anomalies that were confirmed by infill soil sampling. Bedrock source of this gold has never been discovered. Really there's never been any systematic drilling beneath the weathered zone here. So we've only been down sort of 40, 50 meters. We'll be down to vertically at least 100 meters, getting down into that fresh rock, looking for that sulfurified rock underneath the weathered zone. So lots of work here to do, 4 pads right off the bat, and we'll be permitting more holes here as we go. This is a look at Fosterville. Yeah, I mean, just backing up. I mean, the prize here for us again is at depth. All right, 100 meters plus is what we're interested in that fresh rock. The prize is in the high grade chutes, not at surface. And Fosterville, I mean, as you may know, Fosterville at one point was owned by Crocodile Gold in the 2000s. It's had various owners, but recently was acquired, relatively recently acquired by Kirkland Lake. And it took Kirkland Lake systematically exploring this mine, this project at depth, to prove it out into the world-class ore body it is today, as one of the highest grade gold mines in the world, and perhaps one of the most profitable. Initially, Fosterville was mined at surface. You can see the areas in pink at the top were the oxide, and that tended to be where the mining took place initially. Relatively unspectacular mine. I mean, 1 to 2 grams per ton oxide. But again, it took Kirkland Lake really committing to systematically explore this at depth. How do we compare to Fosterville? Well, just looking at the geology, similar age of rocks, similar types of rocks, similar structural setting, and then critically at the bottom, geochemically, almost identical geochemical suite, identical geochemical signature: gold, arsenic, antimony, and lead. On to Myrtleford here. As I got to earlier, there's over 70 past producing mines on the property at Myrtleford, roughly 5 million ounces of gold produced in that area, almost all mining and exploration work stopping at the water table. These small syndicates and folks, old timers that were working the property did not have the capital to get underneath the water table, and did not have sufficient pumping capacity or the capital to efficiently do that. Myrtleford's a much larger property. It's roughly 420 square kilometers. Like I said, 70 plus historic gold mines, really the consolidation of that whole historic camp. Very good access, lots of forestry roads, access by paved and gravel roads, 100% owned, not an option to earn in, and 1% NSR going back to the vendors. So here we've got, I mean, it's quite a vast property relative to Beaufort. We've got our arms wrapped around Beaufort quite well. Here, there's 5 areas where we see substantial clusters and corridors of historic gold mines where this is never being looked at holistically, just the sort of people working these individual small parcels of land. So we've got a tiger by the tail here, somewhat in the southeast, where this is our initial target called Happy Valley. Roughly 35,000 ounces of gold produced historically there at roughly an ounce per ton, so very high grade. And what we've been doing here is, if you look at this cross section, I'll highlight these areas. These are called, they're referred to in Australia as reefs. These are just vertical, subvertical quartz veins that run at depth. And so the areas highlighted in black are the mined out stopes. There, access through this blue line is the adit in the tunnel that was used to access those stopes. What we've done is we've drilled across those where we project those quartz veins to run at depth, to continue at depth, and these reefs do tend to continue down at depth, often to, I mean, perhaps 1,000 meters, so we've drilled across where we project those quartz veins to go. Two drill holes on the same azimuth. The first two into visible gold, as I've mentioned. One about 60 meters beneath these historic workings, and another about 80 meters below that. And then two more holes on a different azimuth and testing along strike. And we had quite a good time of it. So on hole 2, our first hole only went down about 15, 16 meters. It wasn't as the right angle, so we pulled that hole up and started really on hole 2. Hole 2, it was where we initially hit visible gold, like I said, 60 meters beneath those historic workings. And then hole 3 is where we really so we're able to confirm that these structures continue at depth. So seeing here about 3 meters of quartz veining, and with sort of associated sulfides and transition material on both sides, probably about close to 2 meters true width on those quartz veinings, but quite spectacular looking visible gold there. So the program here is designed, the whole design of it was to test for down dip extensions of these previously mined structures. And I think we've been successful in doing that. So here are the drill holes here in the cross section. So these are the historic workings up here, and beneath that hole 2, you can see that's where we first on our first hole we're into visible gold in 2 separate areas, sort of 90 to 120 meters beneath, and then on hole 3. Confirming the extension of those mineralized structures substantially below where this historic mining took place, and more spectacular and broader at depth. So quite exciting. We're looking forward to receiving these assays in the next week or 2 and are excited to report those to the market. And that's just, I mean, really, it's just one area of strike that we're looking at. Just in one area of Myrtleford and Happy Valley, and this Happy Valley is within a corridor of these historic gold mines, quite a distinct corridor, 7 kilometers long on our property, that we're now doing targeting work all the way along this corridor, flying LiDAR to look for access as far as drilling in the future and permitting more drill pads, and and also soil sampling this area to also inform our targeting efforts. So large number of gold mines in this area, just a huge amount of opportunity just down here in the southeast. But there's other areas. We're flying LiDAR over the entire property, looking for best ways to access these areas of interest. And so lots of work here at Myrtleford. And here, this is a good snapshot of the type of material that the old timers would have mined here. You can kind of see these quartz veins here, and on the sides, this sort of transition material. This would very sulfidic pyrite, arsenopyrite. These quartz veins historically would have run almost an ounce per ton, so 31 grams per ton. What's very interesting to us is the extent to which this type of transition material grades. Right, if historically material that was perhaps 6 to 8 grams per ton would not have been economic for the old timers to mine. But to the extent it grades 6 to 8 grams per ton, this kind of material would be very interesting to us. I think I've taken you through the senior management, myself and Martin. Again, so a very capable management group. Gavin, the CFO. Very good group, as I mentioned, on the ground. The ground there is really amenable to geochemistry as a way of targeting. Our program's run by a PhD geochemist who's very good. Pete has been running the drill programs. Pete has substantial experience of running drill programs in Australia, running teams there. He's a local, so he lives roughly half an hour from one property, a few hours from the other, but has a keen understanding of the area. And these guys have been instrumental in us getting our permits done, ensuring well-run drill sites that withstand any scrutiny. So we've had a very good time of it there as far as setting up these targets and knocking them down. I think the other name I'd draw your attention to is Steve Butler, who came on board. Steve was my mining analyst while I was at Wheaton, and he's the head mining analyst at Canaccord for about 10 years, most recently at GMP. But I've had him on a few different mine tours that I worked on, and he's seen hundreds of mining projects around the world. And critically, he was also the mining analyst on Kirkland Lake as they were proving out the Fosterville Reserve there in the Eagle, Harrier, and Swan zones. And when I told him what we were doing here at E79 and who the team involved and showed him the properties, he was really interested in what we were doing and enthusiastically came on board. Just show you a snapshot of Gantt chart of what our plan is and what we've been up to. I showed this to investors in November where we raised our $6 million, and I draw your attention to it really just because we've done a very good job of sticking to what we said we'd do. In an industry that tends to overpromise and underdeliver, I think we've done a very good job of doing what we said we'd do. So phase one drilling over at Myrtleford, done on budget, on time, and now over drilling phase one drilling at Beaufort, permits in hand, methodically setting up targets, doing our targeting via geochemical work, understanding the structures, and just methodically again setting up these targets and drilling them off. So I think a very good record there of execution. Looking at some market comparables, this is not a like-for-like comparison, but a suite of companies that are operating in the area. I think we have a very attractive valuation given the type of land, type of team we have, and the fact that we'll be drilling now all summer through the end of this year, fully funded. I think there's some folks here that are further along the development line than we are, but certainly I don't see any reason that we can't target. And there's folks there up to $50 million market cap doing much the same type of work that we're doing, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't target that type of valuation. And just look at the cap table. Currently, again, $18 million market cap, about $4.5 million in the bank, tight share structure. And that wraps up the presentation. I'd like to open it up to Q&A, please, David.
Great. Thank you very much, Rory. Very good presentation there. So everyone, we're going to now kick off the Q&A portion of the webinar. As I mentioned before, please insert your comments into the text box. We will get to as many as we can. So Corey, I guess Rory, to kick it off here, anything in particular that drew you to this project while you were seeking opportunities? Was it jurisdiction, the project itself, maybe similarity to Fosterville?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think, even in my experience with Wheaton, is you're looking for these jurisdictions that first of all are mining friendly. Very similar to Canada and very good mining laws. We've had a very good time of it with permitting, and really the team, the technical team really drew me to it. The fact that we sort of done the work, put our technical reports out, no surprises there. And this the 2 kilometer long gold arsenic antimony anomaly at Beaufort. Sitting on structure, never drilled to depth. I mean, I was quite frankly shocked at that we could have this target, and that it hadn't already been picked over. Right? I mean, to have this type of area that's produced this much gold, I'm used to trips to Nevada and Timmins and these types of areas of the world that are being pretty thoroughly picked over and don't have this type of prospectivity still available to us. So. I think that's what really drew me to it. Like I said, interesting jurisdiction, and I've had a very good time of it there in Victoria as far as permitting and being able to do the work that we need to do.
Okay, and were you commodity agnostic, or maybe given your background at Wheaton and some of your directors, it was always going to be a gold project?
Yeah, I mean, I like some of the other commodities, but very much happy to be in gold. And I've been a gold bug for quite a long time. I've spent the last 15 years in gold. Before I was at Wheaton, I was with a company called Castle Gold. I was the last person out the door there as we sold that project to Argonaut. That was the El Castillo gold mine. Ended up being their flagship project, and I was very much a gold bug in mid 2000s, seeing stimulus happening then, and people pulling their hair out at $700-800 billion worth of stimulus just in the U.S., and now seeing what $2-3-4 trillion worth of stimulus just in the U.S. and so yeah, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else other than gold. I think it's gold's putting in a really pretty base here. It has been around 1900. I know a little off today, and our charts, our stock is putting in a really nice base here too. So yeah, really happy to be in gold. Obviously, even Wheaton started out as silver Wheaton, but we were really adding to our gold business there. So I'm an admitted precious metal gold bug.
Right. Okay. And I guess back in general, as far as exploration upside, working in this area, do you believe the prospectivity lies in the lack of modern and systematic exploration, or really that little effort is made to go deep on some of the known gold deposits? Well, both, right? I mean, I think we couldn't ask for a better target here, and it was known as this alluvial gold field area, but particularly I think what interested us at Beaufort, for instance, is the enigmatic nature of that, the fact that it's never been sourced to hard rock. And really, like I said, I think only explored by majors like BHP and Placer down to 50 to 60 meters. The oxide looking for something cheap and easy in the context of sub $300 an ounce gold. So hasn't seen modern exploration, systematic exploration, and it's seeing it now for the first time.
right where we'll be getting down into beneath the weathered zone and testing out the fresh rock at Beaufort, and then drilling at Myrtleford, drilling beneath the water table there, where we know that's where exploration tended to stop with these small syndicates working the property. So the fact that they've got, we tied up about 80% of that area, 5 million odd ounces of gold, and just stopping at the water table. So it just hasn't had a company in there tying up that whole area and systematically exploring it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I worked for Placer Dome back in the mid '90s, and at that time they were only looking for big deposits. So they obviously saw something in the project. So I guess sticking to Beaufort here, is there really any placer gold potential on either side of that ridge? And is E79 going to look for any of that mineralization, or is that not your focus?
Our focus is in the high grade shoots. The prize is in the shoots. So that's we want to be down into the fresh rock, looking for sort of arsenopyrite. That's what we want to be in.
Okay.
And how interested? I mean, it's look. I think the sort of shales there are quite interesting. Greywackies that we're obviously interested to see veining, but I think what we want to be in is the arsenopyrite.
Yeah, and hence the gold, arsenic, antimony soil samples.
Yeah.
So how wide are the samples in the original survey? Because if you're coming into infill at a 25 meter spacing, will that make a large difference when you start targeting drill holes?
It made a big difference. I mean, we did see, as far as the resolution, I mean, we saw this big, broad area, like I said, 2 kilometers long, gold, arsenic, antimony, lead. And then we worked to increase that resolution to 25 meters, just really to develop the sort of most high priorities areas for drilling, to get pads down and get permitted. It's that whole area that we're really interested in. So, whilst we obviously want to prioritize area, and we've prioritized areas of the highest gold anomalies within that Pathfinder element suite, we'll be working to drill that whole anomaly as well, and be doing more and more infill sampling to target. So we'll be drilling Beaufort now for a couple months, and we'll be drilling all summer here and for the next several months.
Okay, so drilling for the next several months. How many holes? How many meters? Maybe a drill budget are you planning to complete at Beaufort, and when might we expect those assays?
Yeah, I would say roughly 5,000 meters. I think is a phase 1 at Beaufort. I think what we found there, and I sort of bow to the experience of the folks that know that area on my team. What we found is successful is, and they have in their experience, is permitting the areas that are your highest priorities, and then when you're there, then developing more targets and permitting more holes. So we've only released the amount of holes that we have explicit permitting for, but we'll be there setting up more targets and doing much more drilling. Generally, I would suggest 6 to 8 weeks from each hole, from as far as getting that assay, but we'll likely do these together. I think that's what we're seeing at Myrtleford. These 2 VG holes I've suggested 6 to 8 weeks, and I think it will probably work out around there to get both of those holes out to the market. So I think that's roughly correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Moving over to Myrtleford, quite a few historic mines there. I imagine there's lots of historical data. Has this area ever been explored as one large land package, or is E79 really the first one to put it all together?
It really is. We are really the first to consolidate this whole area. It was really explored by small syndicates, even sometimes families that would have plots, but would never look at it as this whole as on a holistic basis. So we're flying the area, really getting a sense to how we can access these areas of that we know host trends, corridors of historic gold mines. At Happy Valley, there was quite a bit of that was the area that probably had the most historic information. We knew there was a gold mine there. We knew where that they stopped mining there at the water table, and so we that was kind of a pretty low hanging fruit target. There is let's drill beneath these historic gold mines, the gold mine there at Happy Valley, and see if we can test that for those mineralized structures to continue at depth. And we've demonstrated that they do. And so that will require more follow-up, but these assays will tell us a heck of a lot more.
Yeah, I think you just answered my next question. You know, all that data and the pre-existing mines essentially give you a better handle on where to look for these high-grade plunging gold zones.
Yeah, they did. I mean, and that's where it really helps having locals working with us. So Peter DeVries ran the drill program there. He's a local, and he's quite a keen historian of that area. And so he built the drill program. And I mean, I have to hand it to him, being in gold, visible gold on the first hole, and then on the second hole beneath that same azimuth, but 80 meters away. So I have to hand it to him that he really had a well thought out program.
Great. Hot holes right out of the gate. So is your goal to define high grade underground resources here, or might you look for a bulk tonnage open pit potential as well?
Look, I mean, I think we'll be governed by what's there and what the assays tell us. But look, I think to the extent you can get in and find a vein and be able to intersect that vein a few times, and I think you follow it along, right? I mean, at Wheaton we had there was a project that was one of the company makers there was San Dimas, that you're probably familiar with, and I mean that was just they would just follow one vein until it was done, and then find another vein and follow that along, and look, I think obviously if there's the endowment to make something like that make sense as an open pitable type project, I think obviously that the economics can be good for that. But if it grades well, and if we see this transition material grade, then perhaps you can start making the case that if you see sort of mineable widths, even as we're starting out here, then I think you can make the case for, well, look, let's find more of these veins, right?
Right. Okay. And then similar question as before, you are already drilling here. So, what sort of program, how big a program are you doing, and when might we expect some assays?
Well, Myrtleford, we've got those two VG holes. We packaged those off together on a pallet as soon as we could, really. So we've got those being looked at together. So I think that was important to first of all let the market know that we were in gold underneath that historic gold mine, and then to get those assays. So we'll do that. We've done a couple more holes there as a phase one at Happy Valley, and really we want to be methodical and respectful of shareholders' money. So we want to understand what kind of material we're in at those depths. We were drilling down to 400 meters drill holes. So there's lots of information for us to pore over there, and as we consider a phase two approach. But I would say, like I said, a week or two for those VG assay results. Very excited to see what those tell us, and then we'll release more and about the whole program there, likely in the context of what we'll do as a phase two approach there.
Okay, and 400-meter holes. So these holes actually take a little bit longer to drill than elsewhere.
No, exactly, and then to log, right? And as you can imagine, with this area of the world, it's part of the challenge is finding good people that can log core and work in the field. And we built a really good team, but 400-meter long drill holes take some work logging. So
for sure. Okay. Would you consider any further M&A activity or bring in any joint venture partners to help you move these projects forward, the two projects you already have?
Yeah, I mean, I think we certainly consider that. Look, I think there's lots of value that we can add in the short term, right? We've got this really nice target at Beaufort that we're drilling now, so we don't want to give away that type of value, right? I don't think our shareholders want us to give that away and add that kind of upside. But as far as yeah, I mean, as far as the sort of the corp dev type stuff, I think, look, if there's something strategic there that makes sense, if we believe it could be accretive to our shareholders, there's something that strategically there makes sense based off what we're seeing geologically in the area that we can deploy our team and wrap our arms around pretty well, I think we would consider it. But as far as working with sort of a JV, look, I think, look, I think there's a few ways that end games for companies, right? That you either go ahead and mine it yourselves, or you're acquired, or you work with a company and get a sort of a mid tier to invest and help you with it. And I think that's something that could make sense. Like I said, I don't think we want to give a value away at this time, but look, I think that's a natural exit strategy for shareholders is acquisition or partial acquisition by a mid-tier looking to gain exposure to Australia and a gold camp like the Victorian Gold Camp and really positive geopolitical area of the world, good jurisdiction to work in. So I think that could be attractive to a lot of companies. And in the meantime, I think there's a lot of de-risking we can do of the projects. But yeah, sure, if it's something like where we focus on Myrtleford, which is 100, and have a company come in and drill the living heck out of Beaufort to earn in, that could be something that could be interesting to us.
Okay, down to our couple last questions here. CSE listed currently. Would you consider a TSX Venture, or OTC listing?
Yeah, I certainly would. We looked at the venture. I mean, really, the reason is that we had a nice sort of clean shell that was purpose built to pull in this private Australian company, this entity that had Beaufort and Myrtleford. So it worked well to pull into that shell, nice and clean, and then we could do our $6 million raise. I did talk to the venture, and we've got go-aheads to go ahead there, but there are certain rules there regarding acquisition of properties and how that payment is done and term and such. And I think it was essentially moving to the venture this year would have meant negotiating the terms of my contract with my vendors, and I'm not about to do that. I'm not about to ask them to do that. So I would suggest something next year is a likelihood that we would pursue that.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then, finally, and I hope we're not duplicating ourselves too much here, but maybe just a little bit more elaboration on your board and management team, how their skill set might help you to explore.
Yeah, well, I mean, Steve, I was very happy to be able to pull Steve in. He's got a world of experience, just like yourself, obviously being a head precious metal mining analyst. Vince Sirachi, I came across Vince's company, Cucho Copper, and Gavin is the CFO. And so Vince came on as the chair of the company, and Gavin is the CFO. And I came across them like I said, at Cucho Copper and Wheaton. We did a stream with Cucho Copper, and found them to be well organized at Cucho Copper, and we quite liked that project, and found them to be a credible group, and Gavin's been an excellent CFO to bring on board. So good experience on that side, on the corporate side. And then on the technical side, I mean, advisory, have a lot of experience there. But really, Martin is the technical director, and Martin's been a part of a lot of wins. I won't out him and which company he's with in the UK, but very prominent private equity company. Martin's a very well-known entity in the business, and really helps guide the overall strategy. Right, we've got folks on the ground that are doing a very good job of targeting and drilling off these targets, but really rely on Martin for that overarching strategy.
Yeah, very good. Well, it sounds like you guys are in good hands.
Excellent.
And, a lot going on, and assays coming soon. So with that, I want to thank you, Rory, for spending time talking with us today.
Thank you very much, David. Thanks for hosting us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for